Hello everyone, my name's Cliff and welcome back to my channel. This is Cliff's Dark Gems. Today I'm going to be doing a follow-up from a video I've done previously about dark non-horror gems. And here we have some more dark non-horror recommendations. Stay tuned. Okay everyone, before we carry on and before we get into the books, I just want to make 3 quick points. First one is a sort of channel announcement. I've decided to undertake a bit of a project. I'm going to, over a period of 10 videos, list my top 100 books of all time. And I'm doing this because I was inspired by a series of videos by the channel Pick Your Pop Culture Poison. I'll link that channel below. Please be sure to go and check out the channel. It's pretty awesome. And yeah, I think this is going to be quite a fun project to do. It's going to take a little bit of time to plan, so I'm not sure when I'm going to start it, but I've already been thinking about it. And I know this is a horror channel, like Dark Gems, but that does imply other books as well and other genres as well. Secondly, I would like to say that I did a community poll last night, and on that community poll I asked people to vote for their go-to genre besides horror. And I had no idea that this video would link with that, and it's completely coincidental, so it's kind of strange that, yeah, this video very definitely links with that poll. Because on the poll I asked, yeah, what are your other genres that you go for? And it's everything from fantasy to science fiction to Gothic and that's what you're going to find in this video today. The third point is that, as I said, this video is a follow-on. I will link that particular video at the end of this video, and yeah, be sure to check that out as well for more recommendations. Okay, the first book on the list is Titus Grown, taken from the Gorky trilogy. Now, the interesting thing is that when this came out, this is a real classic, by the way, and it's sort of the same time as a lot of other fantasies like Lord of the Rings, and when I was young I used to love those kind of fantasies, sword and sorcery, magic, strange creatures, dragons, all that sort of thing. You're not going to find any of that in here. This is about a very strange family called the Growns, and the birth of their son Titus. And the beginning of the novel is the birth of the son. The end of the novel is the first birthday of the son. And now there's a lot of weird political intrigue and all sorts of things that happen in this novel. I got to admit, I did not enjoy it. That's not what this list is about. This list is about giving you recommendations for books that I think you may enjoy as a horror reader. And the reason I think you may enjoy this particular book is because of its Gothic setting and because of its Gothic atmosphere. It's an old, decaying, decrepit castle, just beautifully written. And there's just a sense of doom and gloom throughout this book. It's almost nihilistic. There's a secret passageway. As I said, there's crumbling walls. So yeah, it gives you this kind of dark, foreboding feel that you won't find in other works of fantasy. So it might just be the right one for you. Okay, that is Titus Grown from Gorky Park. Okay, next up we have The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Now I was kind of hoping that I would find that in this particular book, but this is a book of his short stories, so that novel isn't in there. But it's one of the few Sherlock Holmes books I've read, and it's very interesting. It's about death of Sir Charles Baskerville, who resides in the barren moors of Dartmoor, and it's a mysterious death. Now there's an ancient curse involved, where this giant demon dog howling in the moors at night, basically that every man from the Dartmoor family, from the Baskerville family, is under this curse that they will die. And so Sherlock Holmes goes to investigate, or rather Dr. Watson goes to investigate, and we've got to find out about how this man died. Now, it's a murder mystery and it's very light on anything horror, but the reason I added it to this list is because you might enjoy the gloomy kind of Gothic atmosphere. This idea of this hellhound, there might be a bit of a supernatural thing involved, and so this is a book you might want to pick up if you want to explore the mystery genre. So that is The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Okay, just a few interesting facts about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is, number one, that he was a very keen sportsman, and he actually contributed to the people's love of skiing, and he was a big cricket player and cricket and soccer, and he actually ended up playing cricket with the author of Peter Pan. So that's one interesting fact. The second thing is he believed very firmly in fairies, to the point where he actually wrote a book called, let me just find it here, The Coming of the Fairies. So that's a very interesting thing about that author. Okay, next up we have a crime thriller set in Moscow, or set in Russia, and it's called Gorky Park. Now, the very interesting thing about this is the fact that it is set during the Cold War in this place, so you get the sense of paranoia and dread. But it is about it starts off with a triple homicide, where the victims, you find that this detective or the people find these victims in the snow in this Moscow park, and all their faces have been peeled off, their fingers have been cut off. This is to avoid identification. And so this detective, I think it's the homicide detective, gets on the work as an investigator who basically takes up the case, but he ends up battling the KGB, the FBI, and even the New York police get involved. So it's obviously a novel of intrigue and so on. It's an excellent spy thriller. Now, what is interesting about this novel in terms of horror lovers is that it is incredibly graphic. It's incredibly violent, the death toll is pretty high, and as I said, there's a sense of paranoia and dread that runs through this entire novel, and that I think is because it's set at that time period, a sort of Cold War feeling about it, and set in Russia, where you can't trust anyone, you're kind of constantly looking over your back. And yeah, this investigator goes through a little bit of hell, but he's determined to get to the bottom of this. He's got to, I think he's bribed a number of times, but because of the person that he is, he wants to solve this crime. Now, another very interesting thing about this particular author is that before he wrote this novel, Gorky Park, he wrote a horror, or a number of horrors, and one that I've actually reviewed earlier on in this year, which is Nightwing, and it's about these giant killer bats that cause havoc and kill and maim and murder and whatever. So to go from that to go to Gorky Park is quite interesting as well. Okay, next up we got a terrifying non-fiction biography called Touching the Void by Joe Simpson. And now basically this is, he goes out with his friends to the Peruvian Alps and they make the summit, and they have an accident during the climbing. And it is basically a brutal tale of survival, of a man pushing himself to the very limits. There's frostbite, there's so many things that happen in this thing with sub-zero temperatures, and there's some devastating choices that he has to make. And so really, if you're a fan of survival horror, this will be a very, very interesting read for you. It might be difficult at the beginning because there's a lot of mountaineering terms and kind of things that you might not have heard of before, but he does provide a glossary at the back of the book, and I think once you get through that, you can start enjoying it for the, in my opinion, the survival horror book that it is. Now, an interesting thing about the author who actually wrote the book is he's not only a mountaineer and an author, but he's also a corporate public speaker. So that is Touching the Void. Okay, the next one is a bit of an unusual one. I was wondering whether I should actually add it to this list, but I taught it at school and it is quite a powerful book, and just because it's YA does not mean that an adult could not enjoy it as well. And that is Lewis Lowry, The Giver. Forget about the movie. In my previous video that I did, the dark gems, the non-horror gems, I mentioned Brave New World. Now this is along a very similar kind of lines as Brave New World. It is also about a society that is seemingly perfect in every way. The society does not feel any pain, it does not feel any pleasure, and it sees things literally in black and white. And you're programmed from the moment you're born. You're born into this society and you've got to conform. And just be warned, it's infanticide. Yes, it's infanticide in the story. Lovely children's book. But basically, at the age of 12, all the boys and girls are assigned tasks or assigned a role that they will play in society. And this one boy goes up with this character called the Giver, who stores all the memories of the past, all the emotions, everything, so that no one else in the society has to experience them. Okay, and this goes wrong for the boy because he starts seeing things and he wants to get out. Now, like I say, I kind of thought along the lines of, why do we read? Why do we read horror? Okay, it's to experience the emotions. It's to experience sensation. It's because that is what makes us human. And this book just got me thinking about that. That for me, it would be hell to not be able to experience pleasure and pain, to not be able to dream, to not be able to love, to not be able to make love. Babies are artificially inseminated. They don't belong, the parents don't have children. So it's kind of a hellish society, even though these elders will say, look, there's no pain, there's no war, there's no crime. Still, those are all these things, as bad as some of these things are, that is what makes us human. We feel emotion, we feel sensation. So in that way, this is quite a powerful little novel for me. That is The Giver by Lewis Lowry. Next up we have Every Dead Thing by John Connolly. Now, I've read a number of John Connolly's other works that are more along the line of horror. That is Nocturnes, a collection of short stories, as well as The Book of Lost Things, which is a favourite of mine. Now, Every Dead Thing is a novel about a haunted but brilliant detective, Charlie Parker. His wife and child were brutally murdered by the serial killer, and their faces were taken as a souvenir, as a serial killer does all these things, and their bodies are used as artwork. Now, at the time, Charlie Parker, the detective, was in a pub drowning his sorrow after a fight with his wife, so you can imagine how this would have affected him. Now, he ends up on the hunt for the serial killer. It is incredibly tense, it's incredibly dark, this particular novel. I know that when I read it when I was much younger, I didn't give it that many stars, but perhaps that's because I hadn't read a lot of crime fiction and I was trying to compare it to a book like this. But this deserves a reread for me. Why would you enjoy it as a horror reader? Well, mainly because it is, as I said, very dark, but it also has a kind of vein of supernatural running through it. I think there's a witch doctor involved, and there's sort of magic involved. So yeah, it has all that going for it as well. Now, even if you don't pick up this book, I recommend this author highly. He's absolutely fantastic. As I said, The Book of Lost Things is one of my favourite novels of all time. And it's supposed to be like a fairy tale retelling, but it's just so dark. So yeah, that's John Connolly, Every Dead Thing. Okay, finally, I'm going to talk about a book that I've already done a very detailed review of. I think it was about 20 minutes. And I will link that at the end of this video. And that is Perdido Street Station by China Mabel. It's a huge chunker of a book, but it's absolutely fabulous. And the reason that I'm including it here is because it is a very weird mix of, as I said, weird fiction, or as he says, new weird fiction, and horror, fantasy, science fiction, steampunk, all of this stuff mixed in together. Now, I'm not going to go too much in detail with the story, but it is about this mad, eccentric scientist who's helping out this half-man, half-bird creature who's had his wings cut off. And he's helping him out because he wants to learn to fly again. And in this story, you've got a myriad of very strange, very weird creatures. You've got mutants, you've got half-breeds, and the star of the show in this book is the city itself. The world building is absolutely phenomenal. The city is dark, it's foreboding, it's dangerous, it's threatening, but at the same time, thanks to the writing, it's also strangely beautiful. Now, of course, there's a hell of a lot more to the story than what I've just been talking about, but you need to watch my review for that. Why horror? Well, out of all the options that I've given you now, basically this book is the most horrific, but it just blends fantasy, science fiction, horror, and all these things so creatively into this kind of boiling pot. So if you haven't checked out this Perdido Street Station, I would highly recommend it. I am going to be reading more of this author at a later stage as well, so check it out. Okay everyone, so that's the end of my video. Let me know if you've read any of these, comment in the dark spaces down below, and if you enjoyed my video, please be sure to like and subscribe for more content. Take care of yourselves, keep those pages turning, and cheers.